Hi, I'm Lori Vincent, and this book talk is about Kristin Hanna, a popular contemporary author of fiction, about her latest that was published just earlier in 2021. And it is a multi generational story, it is historical fiction. Some of the topics in this are the bonds of family, mother daughter relationships, but also what makes a family. There are a couple of different mother daughter relationships that unfold in this multi generational story. It's about social class, it's about poverty and migrant workers. And the setting is during the Dust Bowl. And so it starts just after the Great Depression in the panhandle of Texas and progresses for 5 or 6 years. It is beautifully written. I read it over the course of about 2.5 days. I couldn't put it down. And in class, when we started with visual analysis, one of the images that we looked at was Dorothy Lang's migrant mother, and it was the black and white photograph of a migrant worker. And although this is not about the subject of Dorothy Lang's photograph, her famous photograph that we studied, it is about the same time period. And those images were very vivid in my mind with this very moving story. And one of the things that I marked, so if you borrow my copy, if this is something that you are interested in, um, is at the end, there in the author's note, she references the fact that it was late 2020 when she was finishing up this particular story of hers. Some of you may be familiar with some of her other works, The Great Alone and Firefly Lane, which is now, I think it's a miniseries on Netflix. But anyway, in her author's note, she references the fact that even though this story is about extreme poverty and hardship during a difficult time in our shared American heritage, that the number of people who were out of work and becoming destitute and its comparison to some of the social effects of the current pandemic were not lost on her. And so part of it just says a special thanks to the people on the front lines of the pandemic, the first responders, the healthcare workers, the essential workers, and everyone keeping our communities safe. You are rock stars. And that she's one of my favorite authors, and I know I say that about almost everybody that I do a book talk with. But it just sort of made me love her even more. As I write this note, and it's at the end, it's May 2020, and the world is battling the coronavirus pandemic. My husband's best friend, Tom, who was one of the earliest of our friends to encourage my writing, and who was our son's godfather, caught the virus last week and has just passed away. We cannot be with his widow, Lori, and his family to mourn. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that the Great Depression would become so relevant in our modern lives, that I would see so many people out of work, in need, and frightened for the future. As we know, there are lessons to be learned from history, hope to be derived from the hardship faced by others. So I know that I mentioned that poverty and social class struggles are one of the topics, but I really think that one of the related topics is about perseverance and the drive of the American spirit. And so I do have a copy, and you are welcome to check it out if you are interested in this title.